Good morning. We'd like to welcome you to another edition of the Sunday School Review. This week's lesson is entitled Healed by Faith. And in this lesson, we look at the healing ministry of Jesus. And this lesson starts at Matthew, the 9th chapter, verses 18 through 26. And verses 18 and 19, we see the healing of Jairus' daughter, the healing of the girl. And verses 20 through 22, we see the healing of the woman with the issue of blood. Now, let's give you a little bit of background before we dive into this lesson. Now, we know Matthew is one of the gospel writers, and he's one of the synoptic gospel writers. That is, Matthew, Mark, and Luke are considered synoptic gospels. And we're going to be referring to those two books as we explore this lesson. Now, Matthew was a tax collector, and Jesus called him to be one of his disciples. And at this time, Jesus had established quite a reputation. He was healing and casting out demons, and he was ministering around Galilee. And we know last week's lesson, it was where Jesus calms the sea. And one of the scriptures said, what type of man is this that even the sea obeys him? And we talked about that last week. Okay, but in this particular lesson, starting at the 9th chapter and verse 18. Now, as I said, Jesus had just called Matthew a tax collector as one of his disciples. And Matthew wanted to introduce him to his friends. So no doubt, obviously his friends were tax collectors. Some of them, a lot of them probably. So that's when Jesus gets this reputation of eating with publicans and sinners. Okay, and that's what he told them. He told the people that I didn't just come to save the righteous, I came to save the sinners. That's why I came. Now, and we go on with a little bit more of the introduction. And at this particular time, John the Baptist was in prison. And John the Baptist had disciples. And at this particular time, just before we get into the 18th verse of this lesson, Jesus was talking to John the Baptist's disciples. And the issue was, why are your disciples different from the disciples of Jesus? And Jesus was explaining to John's disciples that my ministry is different from John's ministry. And they were talking about one of the issues was fasting. And that's when Jesus was explaining to John's disciples and no doubt the crowd of people that were there at this occasion that my ministry is different from John's ministry. And so that's where we jump into verse 18. And it says, Father's request. Verse 18 of the 9th chapter of Matthew. While he spake these things unto them, beheld, there came a certain ruler and worshiped him. Now, this is why I say he was talking to, namely John's disciples. And while he was talking to them, there came in a certain ruler. Now, as I said, made reference to the synoptic gospels. Matthew is one of them. Matthew is not a very detailed person. So we're going to find that Matthew left out a lot of details that's included in Mark and Luke. And the first detail we'll see here in verse 18, a certain ruler came. We know from the other gospel that was his name was Jairus, and he was a ruler of the synagogue. That's who he was. Okay, so Jairus came in as as Jesus was in the process of talking to John's disciples. That's what verse 18 is telling us. And now another point is that it says certain ruler. Now he was a Jew, obviously, and as I say, he was a ruler of the synagogue, considered a leader, a ruler. And many of the Jewish rulers or leaders did not like Jesus. They was unpopular. So this is kind of unique that this particular Jewish leader did recognize Jesus, and he came to him. That's sort of unique, okay? And let's go to finish verse 18. And he said, saying, my daughter is even now dead, but come, lay your hands upon her, and she shall live. Now, we also find out from the other gospel that his daughter is 12 years old. That's going to be important a little bit later, but his daughter is 12 years old. And 18 says, okay, she's now dead. No, okay, let's talk about what happened. Let's say, let's go read 19 and then we'll talk about it. Verse 19, and Jesus arose and followed him, and so did his disciples. And there was probably other people too. Okay, so Jesus responded to Jairus' request, okay, and they was in the process of going to Jairus' house. Now, what's left out of Matthew is this, okay, when Jairus got to Jesus, the daughter was near dead, but she was not dead. On the way to Jairus' house, they was met by someone from Jairus' household and told Jairus, don't bother the master, she's dead. Okay, so when this was said, Jesus looks at Jairus and says, okay, trust me. Have faith, trust me. Now, Jesus did not tell Jairus what he was going to do. He just says, I know you have a situation, your daughter was near dead. Now you just have been informed that she is dead. He didn't say, I'm going to raise her up, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Trust me. So obviously, they went on their way to Jairus' house. Okay. And we find that, as I said, from the other gospels. Okay. Now, let's go to verse 20, and it says, story interrupted. Remember, Jesus, Jairus, and the disciples, and probably others are on their way to Jairus' house. Now, let's look at verse 20, and we will read 20 and 21. And behold, a woman which was diseased with an issue of blood 12 years came behind him and touched the hem of his garment. This is 21, for she said within herself, if I may but touch his garment, I shall be whole. Now let's talk about this woman that had an issue of blood. Now this story here is probably one of the most well-known accounts in the Bible, the woman with the issue of blood, okay? And as you know, according to Leviticus, she was considered to be unclean. She could not worship in the temple. She could not be around people. So actually, if we look at it, there's a lot here to unpack. We're not gonna do unpack everything, but we're gonna do a few things. First of all, the fact that she was unclean, she was taking a great risk to come out and appear in this public forum. No doubt she probably was veiled because for 12 years, if she had this issue, somebody else knew that. Well, why don't she come around? Why don't she worship? Well, you know she's got an issue, okay. So she was taking a great risk to do this. But, and also, she wanted to do this discreetly. She didn't want to cause any attention to herself. And also in verse 21, she said within herself, if I could but touch his garment. Now, the Jews, they wore a particular garment like a cloak. It had tassels on it. And I think it had 3 or 4 tassels on it. So there's nothing in the Leviticus or the law that says if you touch the tassels or the hem of a priest or anything garment, that it has healing properties. But this is where her faith was. This was her level of faith. She said within herself, if I can just touch something that is touching him, I shall be made whole. That's her level of faith. Okay, let's go back to verse 18 and see where Jairus's level of faith was. His level of faith was, let's read 18b again. He said, my daughter is even now dead, but come and lay your hands upon her and she shall live. So Jairus's level of faith, if you just touch her, she will be healed. Okay, that was his level of faith. The woman with the issue of blood level of faith was, if I can but just touch something that's touching him. That was her level of faith. Now, let me give you another level of faith. Now, you remember the centurion. Servant was sick, okay? And Jesus had agreed to go to his house. The centurion said, no, you don't have to do that. Just send your word. So this, and Jesus made a comment, I haven't seen this level of faith in all of Israel. So whereas Jairus' level of faith was a touch, the woman with the issue of blood level of faith was, if I could just touch the hem or the tassel. But the centurion level of faith was, send your word, the spoken word. So the point is this, Jesus will meet you where you are. It all depends upon your level of faith. When Jesus told the Jairus, he said, yes, I heard. Yeah, she's dead. Your daughter's dead now. We might as well turn back. No, trust me. Trust me. Just trust me. And that's the key to us. Trust him. Lord, what you going to do? Are you going to do? No, just trust me. Trust me. It's going to be good. Just trust me. Now, and let's go to, and as I said before, let's recap this. This interruption is a story interruption. This happened. The fact that this lady that had been sick for 12 years, no doubt weak, pushed her way through the crowd. Now, Matthew doesn't tell us it was a crowd, but from the other gospels, we found out that it was a crowd. And namely, here's something else that Matthew leaves out. Okay, when the woman touched Jesus, Jesus looks around and says, wait a minute, somebody touched me. And the disciples, they said, Somebody touch you? Yes, somebody touched you. Everybody's touching you. She said, Jesus said, no, no, that was a special touch. And when he revealed that, she was trembling. In other words, she tried to do it discreetly. Now she's caught. And she, at this point, probably don't know what's going to happen to me. Now, as I say, she's unclean. She's not supposed to touch anything. Nobody's supposed to touch her. Okay? But Jesus responds in verse 22. Jesus healed and answered. But Jesus turned about, and when he saw her, he said, daughter, be of good comfort, thy faith have made thee whole. And the woman was made whole from that hour. As I said, she had faith, a trust in God. And that's what the story is trust God. Just as Jesus told Jairus, as it relates to your daughter, trust me. Just trust me. Okay, now they're on their way to Jairus' house, and this interruption. Jesus healed this woman with an issue of blood. Now we pick up in 23, they proceed on their way. And when Jesus came into the ruler's house, now they're at Jairus' house, okay, 23, and saw the multitude of people that were making a noise, he said unto them, give place, for the maiden is not dead, but sleepeth. Now let's talk about, well, let's finish 24. And they laughed him to scorn. Now, in the Jewish society and the Jewish culture, you were buried within a day. Okay, it wasn't a long time. So there were mourners there, and they hire mourners. So it is a loud noise. They're making a lot of noise. That was just the tradition. So the mourners were there, no doubt, hired mourners and all. They were there, and this is what Jesus said. And he said unto them, give place, for the maiden is not dead, but sleep. Now they probably up there, wait a minute. What is it? I was up there. She's dead. I saw her. She's dead. And that's when they scored. What is he talking about? She's not dead. I saw her. And this particular time, let's go to 25. But when the people were put forth, he went in and took her by the hand, and the maiden arose. Now, so he put everybody out. All you people get out of here. And he took in with him Peter, James, and John, those three disciples, and the girl's parents, Jairus and his wife. And when they went in, he took her by her hand, and she got up. And it proved, I believe from the other account, they said, well, give us something to eat. And to prove that she is very much alive. And she was raised from the dead because of the faith of her father. As I said, is where is your level of faith? Is it as Jairus? Just touch her, lay your hands on her. He took her by the hand and she got up. The woman level of faith, if I could just but touch one of the tassels, and that happened. With the centurion, the spoken word, send your word. So the question is, where is your level of faith, because God, Jesus will meet you wherever your level of faith is. And this is exactly what happened here. Now, in verse 26, and fame went herefore went out abroad in all the land. So, as I said, this is about God is able to heal. Last week we saw he was able to calm the storm. Here we see at least two examples of God's ability to heal. And he can heal in various ways. So the power of God to heal, it comes from God. We pray. There is laying on of hands. We go to the doctors. We use medicine, but the power to heal all comes from God. That's the key. The power to heal. God gave the doctors, gave man the intelligence, the knowledge, but the power to do that comes from God, which is the original source. So as we see here, just as last week, Jesus, God in the flesh, was able to speak to the wind, the sea, and they obeyed. And Jesus is able to heal, laying on of hands, heal by his word, by his spoken word. So wherever your level of faith is, Jesus will meet you there, just as he met the individuals in this particular lesson. As I said before, he healed the woman with an issue of blood for 12 years. He raised Jairus' 12-year-old daughter from the dead. So Jesus has the power to heal. We'd like to thank you for watching today. We ask you to join us next week for another edition of the Sunday School Review. Thank you.